What do you think?
Perfect.
Okay, it's recording.
Oh, my beard grows in a asymmetrical fashion. So usually I'll have like extra hair here and no hair here. So I had to like shave that to even it out for this video. This week was exciting because I featured some of the computer projects that I was working on at First Thursday Art Walk in Seattle. First Thursdays, this is like maybe in other cities too, they have this arts night where a bunch of galleries open up their doors and have people come in to look at and buy the art. Impact Hub had an event that featured baristas from the local cafe where I work. And so I was able to show off some of the computer projects that I was working on. One thing that people asked me a lot is that when they looked at the board, they said, what is this? What exactly do you do? Because the content is all over the place. And I'm gonna show you. Yeah, this was my board. Friends were like, oh, is this your 6th grade science fair? And I said no. The goal was to just put everything that I was interested in onto one board so I could have just an opportunity to talk about it with my friends. My hair is wild right now. I may put on a hat. We're back. Backwards. Cool. What I ended up doing was talking at length with people. People would stop by the display, ask me a couple questions, and I would talk to them for about 10 minutes, kind of answering the same thing. So I wanted to address it here. What exactly do I do? It's not super clear. In 2017, I moved to Seattle and met Cheyenne, who had a very cool business that she was running by herself, and I thought she was living the dream. And so through Cheyenne, I was able to meet other people like Jordan Clark, and also just started getting interested in this whole arena of people who had online businesses that they were running with a combination of Instagram, YouTube, online shops, etc. Around that time, just because of how cool I thought Cheyenne's job was, I interviewed people for a small blog on Medium. I would write little articles and profiles on people like Pikarar and Martin Saylor, just to get an idea of what they were doing, because this was the career that I wanted. I wanted to have the freedom that they had. Learned very quickly, it was super difficult. And a lot of them said, yeah, it looks like we're living the dream, but it's actually more than a full-time job. Cheyenne's dancing right now. This was, again, fueled my interest, and I kept going. I stopped writing about it and started podcasting. I tested it out with one of my friends, Aaron Whitlatch. We did a 5-part podcast series just so I could learn how to podcast properly, which then led to The Orbit. Backtracking a little bit, when I met Jordan Clark through Cheyenne, I also met her partner, Jaron Nix, and Jaron is a videographer. So in talking with Jaron, he said, hey, I'm really interested in what you're doing as well, because I see Jordan struggling with some of the same things Cheyenne's struggling with. You're on to something, I don't know what it is, but I would like to help you out. So Jaron helped me film and record The Orbit every Sunday. What we would do at 3 p.m., we would clear our calendars, and throughout the week, I would just cold call people and network and say, hey, are you free this coming Sunday? I would love to interview you for The Orbit. And we had a guest almost every week. However, just because of technology, we lost maybe 10% of our interviews. I don't know if 10%, maybe, because that's kind of low. There were like, what, 20 interviews? So I think we lost maybe 5, which is a lot more. Like, we lost 5 of our interviews just because the video got corrupted or I was stupid. All of this served as networking, along with research, and also, you know, making content. I hate saying making content. We were making a show.
I don't think there's anything bad about that.
Yeah, I don't know, content creation is like a big eye roll phrase for me.
Yeah, I know, but I would much rather be called a content creator than an influencer.
Fair.
Pick your battles.
And so I was gathering all this information, which again reinforced the idea that we're all struggling with the same things and we don't really know that other people are struggling with them in this arena of online self-directed work, which led to the creation of Sustainable Loops. I went up to Cheyenne and said, Cheyenne, if I wrote the text for a book, would you be interested in designing it? She said, sure, not knowing that it would be super involved. And in about 6 months, we put together a book and published it on Amazon because it was just the easiest way for us to get it out there as quickly as possible. Sustainable Loops was a huge success. I have the data here. As of the fall, we sold 217 paperback copies and 42 ebook copies worldwide. It is by far the most books I have sold. Definitely Cheyenne helped a lot. But people also messaged us and told us that they actually loved what we were talking about in the book. I was able to meet up with a cafe regular who had bought the book, and she said, you know, I wrote out my values and no one really ever asks my values, and you discuss how it orients all progress moving forward. And she showed me how she filled out the worksheets, and it feels good to see people using the thing you made and them actually using it to, you know, move forward. Going back to my notes, Sustainable Loops, success. After that, gave a couple of talks, continued to network, and I talked to a handful of consultants just to see what that field was like, because I felt like I could write more books, but I wanted to be hands-on engaged with creators like Cheyenne, Jordan, Martin Saylor. So I talked to business consultants who kind of did the same kind of work, but it was a little more corporate and the roles are more clearly defined. So around this time I decided to call myself a business therapist because it was a little more approachable than like a consultant. A consultant really kind of brings an old school way of thinking to mind, and a business therapist feels kind of fluid, and the amount that we can do under that title is a little bit more. At least that's what I find. I got some clients, which was wild. Paying clients this year. One of the first, I went up to this cafe and I said, hey, I noticed that you don't have an Instagram. You probably should get one. And the owner was super skeptical and said, why on earth would I need an Instagram? Like, I don't think it converts to sales. Which for me is like a whew moment. Where I'm like, this is gonna be a kind of education. So I stopped in once a week and gave them some stories. I said, if someone's hopping off the train and they're looking for a cafe, they're gonna Google it, they're gonna maybe click on your website, but they probably wanna look through your Instagram just to see what it's like before stopping in. It was a bit of a process, but finally he's like, okay, you can help me out. So I helped him set up his Instagram. I offered to run it for him, and he really didn't want that. It was a whole ordeal, but at the end of the day, when I sat down and helped him set up his stuff and explain the process to him, I did about maybe 20 minutes of work and got paid $100 for it, which was my first paying client. After that, had a handful of others, including Martin Saylor, which you guys have definitely seen doing their crowdfunding campaign, which was another paid gig, and I felt really, you know, involved in the process, and I learned a ton. 2019, it's been going well. And I learned that people do need the service that I provide. I went to XOXO, which I discussed in a previous vlog, which further legitimized what I was doing because I was able to talk to tech people and the people who design like Patreon and Kickstarter. And I said, you know, folks don't really know how to be their own managers. Like, they're using your tools, but no one's training them how to use them the most effectively. And they're like, yeah. The people at these web companies are like, yeah, we don't have too much time to coach these people, which is why other third-party services, I think like BackerKit, for example, just provides resources so that you know how to use crowdfunding resources. They told me that what I was doing seemed to be very valuable because it was a clear gap in the market. At XOXO, I was able to talk to some lawyers as well, and I was like, hey, here's what I want to do, and they said, register an LLC. So registering an LLC has been on my to-do list for a while, and I finally was able to do it this past month. I had to go to the Washington Secretary of State website and pay like I think $200. That was the hump. I had to get $200. Filled out a bunch of paperwork, had to learn things like what's a registered agent? Look it up. It's a little confusing, but I didn't know if I had to pay for the service or be it myself. Bureaucracy stuff takes time. Got my certificate of formation. The Orbit was taken. I couldn't be the Orbit LLC, so I had to choose a different name, which will be revealed at a later time. I got my business bank account, which is another legitimizing step, so I can now keep track of actual business expenses and separate it from my own personal expenses. And it feels good. 2020 is going to be the legitimizing year, is what I call it, just because on paper, everything's on the up and up. I am an actual registered business, and I'll be taking clients. My goal is to have like 5 really solid clients that I work with to help them become better managers and give them a little bit of perspective, because when you're a maker, like a videographer, photographer, a content creator, a lot of the times you're focused on the art and you don't have too much time to focus on like the business strategy side. And just having someone to talk to about that facet of your business is where I come in. Lastly, I'm learning a lot of computer programming, which I've discussed before. And the reason is it gives me a little bit of literacy in understanding how the online tools that people use work. And also just by knowing some JavaScript, I can make little tools and understand how the tools work to automate certain processes. So I'm not a great web developer, but I've spent so much time trying to learn this year that I feel like my technical savvy has increased tremendously, which also potentially adds to my business value. Uncertain, because I have yet to get paid for any kind of computer programming gig, and honestly, at this point, I'm not certain I would pay myself. But at the art walk, folks came up, checked out the little apps I made, and they loved it. They told me, hey, this is a lot of fun. And I was pleased to hear that, because my goal is to make computer projects that are super fun for people to use. Yeah, that's what everyone was telling me. Yeah, am I missing something?
No, I don't think so. You make dope shit.
Thanks. Thanks. Yeah, the reason I'm out here is because I'm super interested in the future of work. I don't know what it looks like, and that's why I'm doing all these interviews. That's why I'm trying to step into this arena of self-employed remote work, because I think it's super cool. And I think a lot of people want to work from themselves or work remotely, just because like 9 to 5 is a rigid structure, and for me at least, I don't particularly like it. And I would like to work on things that I find are meaningful in fields that are interesting and developing. If you have any questions, please let me know. I think the next thing on my agenda is putting together my best of 2019 list. I looked at my Spotify Wrapped, and Isaiah Rashad is my artist of the decade, which I'm not surprised by, but I'm pleased when the data reflects my inner truth. Take it easy, and happy December. Oop.